Hi everyone, I'm going to present you the Smart Contract Manager, which is part of the Aethermarket backplane and will be released within the first public release of Aethermarket. The Smart Contract Manager is part of the Trust, Security and Privacy building block and supports or actually enforces the contractual agreements between data provider and data consumer. The Smart Contract Manager extracts the contractual parameters from the data offering description using our semantic data model. And after a quick negotiation phase between provider and consumer, invokes the smart contract to put such an agreement on the ledger. The Smart Contract Manager is also tightly coupled with other subsystems of Aethermarket, which you can see here on the left. And I also have already painted out for us the interfaces between those subsystems. So for example, a Smart Contract Manager triggers the conflict resolution in case of violations. The conflict resolution component then verifies the non-reproducible proofs and resolves the conflict in favor of the data consumer or the data provider. The Smart Contract Manager also extracts the contractual parameters using the semantic engine. We have a direct link to the payment. We also use the notification manager to notify provider and consumer about possible updates on their agreement. And also the data access is using the Smart Contract Manager to retrieve the agreement data. On top of that, we obviously also provide the functionality of the Smart Contract Manager within the SDK reference implementation. So I would like to show you now the endpoints of our Smart Contract Manager. So first of all, we can request a template with our contractual parameters. So we differentiate between the static and the dynamic parameters. So the static ones are those already filled by the data provider within the data offering description. And the dynamic parameters are the ones filled within the negotiation phase between data consumer and data provider. So for example, here we can retrieve, I already executed it, so that's why you can see it already, but we can retrieve the template, the contractual parameter template for the offering with the offering ID Siemens AG data offering 2. And you basically get a part of the data offering description, especially concentrating on the contractual parameters. So we see we have a specific purpose. We also have intended use specified, so we are allowed to process the data, but we are not allowed to share the data with third parties. Then we also have some information regarding the license, so whether it's, for example, here exclusive or non-exclusive. And then we also have some dynamic parameters like the start and the end date of the agreement, which will be filled within the negotiation phase. And also the data consumer, obviously. So that is not specified during the data offering description creation, basically. So what we want to do now is we just assume now the creating the data purchase request. So this is all part of the SDK reference implementation, this negotiation phase. So we assume that provider and consumer are on one level now, and we are all agreed on specific contractual parameters, and the provider can then create an agreement. So here, for example, we say we want to create as Siemens an agreement with the following ID. Let's change it quickly. And we also specified the start date already and the end date. We have intended use specified, license grant, and so on. So we say, so this is obviously just for testing purposes, but we execute it. And it takes some time because the Smart Contract Manager now invokes the smart contract on Hyperledger Besu to actually create this agreement on the ledger, to create this agreement with those specific parameters. So let's see, usually it takes a while, but what you receive is exactly that, the agreement ID. And the agreement ID is now 20. So we can check again. just gonna close this, and we can now retrieve our agreement with our agreement ID. This one is a bit faster, and we see we changed the 3 to 4 here in the ID. So this is updated, or actually put on the ledger for the first time. And now what we want to do, we can retrieve not only our agreement by this agreement ID, but we can also check the agreements of a specific consumer. We obviously have to try it out. Consumer 333, just very hard to say. And we see a list of agreements already. So this consumer is quite active. The same for the provider, which is actually Siemens here, for example. And we see also this provider, because they're all between those two parties, is quite active already. What we can also do, we can actually also check all active agreements, meaning that all the agreements which were already signed by the consumer, we can execute that, and again we get a list of agreements. Okay. One other thing is we can also sign the agreement. So before an agreement, as I said, is in the state active, it has to be signed by the consumer. And now I have to get the ID again, because I cannot remember it. And we are then able to sign the agreement. And here we see the message, agreement with the following ID was signed. And now we can actually not update the agreement anymore, because a signed agreement, so consent by data provider and data consumer, after this we cannot update an agreement anymore. That was our small demonstration on the Smart Contract Manager, which is now part of the first public release of i3 Market. And yeah, we're very happy. If you would like to try it out, please give us any kind of feedback, and we are very much looking forward to our next steps.